Zach, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right. So we are on YouTube and LinkedIn right now, getting all connected. Looks like we're still connecting to LinkedIn, but we are good on YouTube, doing a good little test run here. Wonderful. Okay, so we have shared lots about my budget coach through podcasts and through different interviews. And we realized we have yet to share the founder story from the founder himself. We've got Zach Whelchel, the creator, the visionary behind my budget coach. And so we thought we'd hop on here, try a live, learn something new, and then also share how he started the company. So, Zach, why don't you start by telling me, as my dog is squeaking her toy, who is Zach Whelchel?
All right. Well, hi. Hello, everybody. I am Zach. Let's see. I live here in Lexington, Kentucky. I live with my wife and two kids. I've got a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old. Both boys, both crazy. They are very destructive. They're into like Pokemon cards and Hot Wheels and stuff like that. Um, Grew up in Kentucky. Have lived here most of my life. We lived in London, England, for a while. A couple years ago, we've traveled a lot. I've been to like 30 some different countries at this point. I really I've enjoyed traveling, but yeah, most of my career has been in the like tech and entrepreneurial space. So I founded a couple of different tech companies, some in the B2B world, some in the B2C world. But my real passion is all about like helping people be intentional with their lives, right? Helping people um, kind of chart their own course and say, this is what I want and how do I get there, right? How do I, be smart with my time, with my money, with my effort in order to make that happen? I feel like a lot of people, we fall into this rut of like being reactionary and letting life happen to us and kind of reacting to it. And I think a lot of value could be had in having a plan and working towards that plan. So money is like a really natural way to do that. And so that's how I kind of, fell in love with budgeting, fell in love with the space, and founded my budget coach.
That is awesome. So, you've had a lot of experience budgeting. You have shared on other platforms how it has changed your lives and your family's lives. So, what sparked the idea for a whole new app? Because there's tons of apps out there. Like, what was it that made you decide to pull the trigger and finally start the company?
Yeah, so you're right. There are literally like hundreds or thousands of budgeting apps out there. So I fell in love with a different budgeting software that was like zero-based budgeting about 4 or 5 years ago now. And to me, that zero-based, it was the game changer. It was the thing that made budgeting really click for me because you take control of like all of your dollars. You kind of give every dollar a job before you spend it. And there's only a few apps out there that are truly zero based. Most of the apps I would say are more like expense tracking, where it's kind of like more of a backwards looking thing instead of a forwards looking thing. And of those apps, most people struggle to succeed with them, right? They'll start a budgeting app, they'll try to do the zero based budgeting, and they'll just kind of fail. And then they'll fail again and they'll fail again. And maybe eventually they'll watch a bunch of articles or videos or read articles or whatever, and they'll succeed. And so what I found was that people need more than just a tool and they need more than just a guidance. They need tools and guidance put together. And so that's what my budget coach is. It's the tool of a budgeting app, but it's also the guidance of connecting you with a coach. And I think when you put those things together, that's what helps people actually change their behavior, actually kind of get over that learning curve and actually learn how to live by a budget.
Now, you had shared before that you have some experience in coaching. You had done some work through your church, and you have actually worked with people. Plus, coming from the tech background of developing different, apps and software. So these two things kind of seem to merge perfectly. Now, what in your experience with like the coaching has stood out now that you're creating an app for these people to sort of digitize that coaching?
Yeah, so yeah, like my wife and I, we fell in love with this so much that we just became kind of evangelists, right? So all of our friends and family, anybody we could talk to, it kind of spread to like, teaching classes at our church or in our community. And so we just kind of fell in love with it and felt like we had to share it with other people. And so what we've learned time and again is one, that piece about coaching. Like people that are going to succeed at this are only going to succeed because they have somebody that's there to, take their calls at night or text, in the morning or, have those back and forth Zoom conversations and kind of make it work. But second, that there's a lot of things that I was just saying over and over again in order to get somebody started, right? You got to do this, you got to do this. This is a habit you have to build. That's a habit you have to build. And so my mind always goes to software. It's, how can we find ways of replicating that so that we can do it at scale, right? Part of the problem in like the budget coaching space is budget coaches are expensive. Like there's only one of them, their time is expensive. And so how can you scale their efforts so that more people can get involved with them and can learn from them at a cheaper rate? So that's part of where technology can come in and help with those things. So I think we've built kind of a coaching experience that's both personal and digital and scalable. And we're constantly kind of growing on that as we build.
Love that. Now, what was the original version or vision for the company, which you kind of shared with me, and how's that vision shifted? So I guess the bigger question is like, have you had to pivot based off of what we've learned these last 2 years in business?
Yeah, so the lifeblood of a startup is pivoting, right? Is that what they say? So
Right.
yeah, part of what we do, I will say that like our core mission has been to help the world fall in love with budgeting, and that hasn't changed at all, right? We're still here trying to help the world fall in love with budgeting because we're a group of people, both on staff and also our coaches that have fallen in love ourselves and feel like it's such a benefit that we want to share that love with others. But how we get there is kind of constantly changing, right? So we're constantly kind of building and iterating, learning from what our coaches need, learning from what our users need, and changing. So, we've changed kind of our business model. I think you'll see some other changes that we're working on in that regard. We've built kind of more tools for coaches, finding that coaches need a space where they can land in order to kind of have all the tools that they need to be effective coaches. Um, so yeah, we're in the middle of this constantly changing, adapting thing, but the core mission there of helping the world fall in love with budgeting and the fact that that needs to be done with that human connection, that hasn't changed, and I don't think that will change as we grow.
Love that. Yeah. And as a coach myself, I can say it's hard when you're an entrepreneur trying to find the CRM and how do you get users and clients and how are you advertising when you're just one single person when all I want to do is coach, right? I don't want to be going on social media and making all of these posts. Like I want to just do what I love, which is helping people budget. And so I think a company that can offer that as well as something for the user is really unique in this space.
Yeah, we see that all the time. People that have a love of budgeting that want to share that love, they want to coach, and yet they don't want to have to become a TikTok star, right? And that's frustrating, right? Because the skill set that it takes to be a good coach may or may not overlap with the skill set it takes to build an audience, right? And so like we don't want a world in which those people that could be good coaches don't have anybody to coach because they don't have that other skill set. And so that's part of what we're trying to do as a brand is to take on that problem of building a central space where people can come to find a budget coach. And we have a long way to go there, but that's our hope.
Love that. Now, if you could go back and give yourself one message on day one of the company, what would it be?
Wow. I would say that just keep going, right? So like this idea that change happens over time, and in a day, in a week, it might not seem like you're making much progress, but you keep going for years, you keep building that community, you keep growing, you keep listening to what people need, and you keep adapting. um, I think that the longer you stay in something, the more you realize what the need is and how you can fill that need. So I've just been encouraged by the growth we've seen in our short time, like a year and a half of doing this. But I feel like in many ways we are just at the cusp of getting started. The more we get out there and go to conferences and meet people and realize how we could be filling needs for them, it's very exciting. So I would say just persistence and listening and adapting and all of those things that we try to do. I would just encourage myself from the start to do that. And also go out and find people that are smarter than you and better than you at a bunch of other areas and build a great team, which we've tried to do and are continuing to do.
I love that. Yeah, and just like coaching, right? Like you're not going to apply the same strategy to every client, to every session, even. Like you got to be ready to think on your feet and shift things. And we've seen a lot of that in this time with the company. So being flexible there is a huge one, just like with our budget, right? It's really no different.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so how can people connect with you? Obviously, we are live on a couple of platforms, but like, what are the different ways that people can connect if they either want to be a coach or if they're interested in getting help with learning how to budget?
Yeah, so you can go to mybudgetcoach.com. I guess if you're watching this on a platform, you could probably just click on the link and go from there. But yeah, we have a 35-day free trial. So what you get there again is you get the software, the budgeting app itself helps you like connect all your bank accounts so you can pull in your transactions and categorize them and set up, your categories and your goals. But you'll also be paired with a coach, right? So you can either take the quiz, and we'll pair you with a quote coach, or you can look through the directory and just pick one that you want to work with directly there. And yeah, it's easy to get started. No credit card required. 35-day free trial. And then if you like it, it's really affordable. It's only like $15 a month after that to keep going. And then you can meet with coaches. Each coach has like a different hourly rate, but you can check that out on the directory. And then for people that don't want to use the app like individually, we also work with coaches, right? So if you're a coach and you're looking for a place to kind of land in order to find clients and grow your business, like we'd love to meet with you. And then we've also started working with other groups as well. One of those has been like advisors. So if you're a financial advisor, we talk to advisors, a lot of them at this point, and they tell us things like, it doesn't matter how beautiful of a plan we make for our clients. If they don't follow through on that plan by actually controlling their cash flow and making those allocations, then it's not going to work. It's not going to happen, right? So we partner with advisors who make these beautiful plans for their clients to help them actually, get that cash flow under control so those plans happen. So, as we grow, we're working with different groups of people, but those are kind of some of the primary ways.
I love that. And like you mentioned earlier, like one of the reasons that we found success is by finding other people who are better at different skills. And I don't coach on investments or taxes. Like I pay people good money to help me with that. I send clients elsewhere. So when they're like, how do I help a client budget? They can send it to us. We are specialized in that. We can work with the small day-to-day finances, the cash flow, if you will, as opposed to here's a spreadsheet, take this home and do this successfully. I'll see you in 6 months and you need
Yeah,
to follow this to a T.
I think the success rate on here's my budgeting spreadsheet, good luck. I think that's close to zero. I've
Yeah.
very rarely seen somebody who just took a spreadsheet and enacted kind of behavior change based on that, right? A budget needs to be a living document, something that you're constantly in, something that's on your phone, you can reference, you can kind of make decisions in the moment, and a spreadsheet just isn't that.
No, no, it's definitely true. I remember the first time I hit my goal, I had budgeted for gas, which is a variable expense. You know that you have very little control over how much you spend on gas. And when I hit it exactly $75 on the nose for the first time, I was so excited. And
Did
that
you
happened once.
did you like click it to like get it right to the 75?
No, I was reconciling later and I hit 75 in my month. This was probably like 5 years ago, and I was like, "Oh, it never happened again." You guys, I was either lower or
Yes,
above. Like you just can't do that with those variables. Maybe your, mortgage doesn't change for a year, right? But the variables is where we tend to lose people. And so this is why you need a coach.
for sure. Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Okay, so we have some good content here. We've got people who know a little bit more about the story. I'll post all this stuff so you'll know where to find us, and we will keep up with these lives now that we're learning another new skill.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Have a good day.
Thanks, Kristen. See ya.
Okay.